You with Harold Doucet with It's Your City. We have in the house today, as usual, David Jones and the Flash Man, Stephen Mosley. Today we want to talk about the restraining order. The temporary restraining order has been granted to citizens out in the Edison area with the hearing scheduled for the 24th of October in Beaumont to determine whether that will be a permanent injunction or whether it will be disallowed. First of all, let me tell you that the views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of our studio guests, callers, and hosts, and does not necessarily reflect the views and options and opinions of the station or its management. And you're listening to The Breeze, KSAP 96.9 FM on the radio dial. If you feel you have anything you would like to say or comment about the show today or the topic, please feel free to call in at 409-982-0247. Now let's talk about the restraining order. You know, we could first talk about the purpose because they had an article in the paper that referred to that being filed by our local attorney here, Langston Adams. And during that, within that article written, we saw comments that were given by Councilmember Williamson on his idea of it, and also we've had whereby there were comments made by council members who supported. But with the restraining order, you know, I think it was something that during this process you're going to find out that there are a lot of things that the general public is not privy to or did not know, and mainly by the way that this was all handled. And what we'll do this morning is we'll just go through some of the actions that was taken by council and some of the procedures and policies that were violated or done, and we'll let people determine whether the restraining order should be permanent or whether it should not be awarded. However, we're going to start with the restraining order itself, and basically what it does is prohibit any work on the housing project prior to the court having a hearing on whether to grant a permanent injunction in which it will then prevent the developer and the housing authority from building this complex within that designated area. That designated area we're all talking about is where the former Edison Elementary School was located. Now, there's some pros and some cons to this restraining order being issued. You know, Councilman Williams went on a record in his article talking about studies that were made and given to council by a developer pertaining to our elderly population and our future population being one that will require housing for our elderly. And also, if you attended some of the meetings when they held discussions on this, the mayor was very adamant about taking care of our elderly citizens here in Port Arthur, and they deserve our support in ensuring that they have affordable housing and decent housing. So let's talk about those. It's a fact that our senior citizens do deserve the council, elected official, and also our youngest citizens to ensure that, you know, they are taken care of. A lot of our elderly citizens are the ones that contribute to Port Arthur growth and what it is today. To ensure that they had affordable and decent housing should be a priority, and they deserve it, and they deserve it rightly so. But when we're talking about giving them affordable housing, we need to take a look at what is being done as opposed to what is being said. The public is being told that this housing project is needed. One, to provide our senior and elderly with affordable housing and decent housing. Two, is that it's needed for our people. And I stress the word our, because when we talk our, it's like a little red flag. It gains all our attention because now we're interested in what impact and affect us as citizens of Port Arthur. But now, the problem with that is when you're being told housing for our people, we have to consider, is this housing for our people? And once again, I have stated in previous program, the Port Arthur Housing Authority is not a Port Arthur entity. The Port Arthur Housing Authority is ran by state and federal regulations and laws. What they do is not just not for the city of Port Arthur. When they are taking application for affordable public housing, they do not take applications and says, we're doing it for Port Arthur. They take applications for any individual who qualify for public housing, whether it's Section 8 or whether it's public housing. But the application is taken and a person qualified according to what the requirements are and what the law is, not according to where they live. So if a person qualifies for housing, for affordable housing, that housing cannot be designated just for Port Arthur residents. So if the Port Arthur Housing Authority choose to build a housing complex in the city of Port Arthur, it's not for Port Arthur residents. When you say we need affordable housing for elderly, if you build housing for elderly in the city of Port Arthur, you cannot designate that it's going to be Port Arthur residents. And if you're talking about we're going to need it because, as Councilman Williamson said, the future says that we're going to have a growing population of elderly, that still won't be a guarantee that our citizens, now I use that word our, it's no guarantee that our citizens is going to be able to get into the housing. Now, not only is this for seniors and elderly, but it applies for family housing. It applies to anybody who qualifies for housing. Now, what people have a tendency to do is tell individuals, give information to individuals, but give it to them in a way that you don't get the whole and true picture of this housing situation. Right now, if any citizen were to look at the list of people on housing, waiting for available housing, they will find out that that list does not consist of only Port Arthur residents. One of the complaints a lot of citizens are making is that they haven't been able to get their homes replaced under the Ike round one. A lot of citizens says, well, they had rules for Ike 1 and I qualified, Well, now under Act 2, they say I'm not qualified. Well, true enough, they changed that rule. But what no one understands is that when you have these laws and these rules that are in place by state and federal, the city doesn't control them. And that's where housing come into play here in the city of Port Arthur. So when we start talking about the housing authority is going to build something that is going to be for our citizens, that is not correct. Any housing project that is built by the Port Arthur Housing Authority is built for any persons that qualify for public housing under the requirements of the law as dictated to them. Now, here in the city of Port Arthur, we have a lot of housing complexes. These complexes, in a way, eliminates rooftops because a lot of individuals do not rent a fine place to live because they end up moving into housing, which in turn eliminate your property owners or eliminate the rooftops, and we get people into complexes. Housing that they permit to be built in the city because it takes away from property owners and it takes away from rooftops. And normally within your public housing, you have a lot of your low to moderate income individuals. So they try to limit the number of people that migrate into their cities because, once again, the city cannot control who goes into these housing. Therefore, the housing authority determines that. And in this particular case, Edison. Let's talk about Edison. If we want to build affordable housing for our elderly, and we say in a true sense for elderlies, let's take a look at where we're going to build it and where we're going to locate it. And with that thought on the building, we're going to take a 2-minute break. And once again, you listen to the Breeze Radio, KSAP 96.9 FM. And if you have any comments, just feel free to call 409-982-0247. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Once again, the Breeze, KSAP 96.9 on the radio. We're talking about the temporary injunction that's been placed on the Edison housing project. When we left, we were getting into the location. Once the citizens in the Edison area came out in strong opposition of it being built in their community, everyone started labeling anybody that was against it as being against the building housing for elderlies. Now, let's look at it intelligently. How does individuals who's lived in a community for years and in some cases decades not want someone to rezone their community to allow multifamily housing to be built in an area that had been single family? That's where they have lived. That's where they reside. And as citizens, they have the right to oppose it being built in that area. So once the citizens says we don't want it in our community, why would your elected official or anyone try to make it appear as though these people are against housing for elderlies? They're not against the housing for elderlies. What they are against, it is being forced into their neighborhood when they have a process that allows them to state their objections to it being built there. And when we talk about it being built there, anytime you're talking about building somewhere, a developer, and developers in most cases, always consider alternate sites. I'm quite sure that in this particular case, that there were alternate sites. So if there's opposition to this magnitude, in order to appease and ensure the citizens' rights are protected, why not let's go through this process and make sure that we do it and do it in a fashion so that their rights can be protected. At the same time, we can ensure that we can at least develop or build housing for our elderly who may be in need of it. Well, the fact is, the elected officials and developers have went out of their way to try to imply that people speaking against building it in that area was against building it for elderly and seniors. That was not the case. But that is one way of misinforming our general public, to divert their attention from what it should be to what they would want it to be. So now we take a look at the site. Why would a developer want to put it at that particular site? Well, if you look at some of the requirements for building housing projects for elderly, they talk about being close proximity to facilities, stores, senior citizen centers and stuff and all of that. Well, that particular site does meet that requirement. But at the same token, when it says that these are things that you should consider when selecting a site, it doesn't state that you should select a site whereby there are single family homes with people living there for years or decades who oppose it, but you disregard their position and build it there anyway. It doesn't say that. What do you think about it, Steve?
Well, I hear what you said. I just want to kind of ask a question. It may not be in the area, but I agree that in essence, what the citizens have asked for is what council should respond to. The citizens don't want a dog pound in their neighborhood. They shouldn't have to have one placed there because the council thinks it's a good idea. If the citizens don't want it there, that's the bottom line. That's who's paying taxes. That's who's paying our leadership salaries. Now, according to the article, Langston Hughes or something he said, a couple of comments, he said, quite simply, the residents don't want the housing department or development in their neighborhood. That's basically it. And then when you talk to Mr. Trainer, Regional Trainer, certainly he has a lot to say, but one thing is really important is that what they say they were not told the truth. They were not told maybe the exact truth about the whole process, because they were kind of, in a sense, left out on some issues that might have made a difference in the way it was done. And then there's just so many things that, as you previously mentioned, the attorney's comments and the decision to change the voting and then accept other people involved in the process and leaving it open, and it just does not make sense for the council to take the action that they did against the voice and opposition of the citizens.
Well, Steve, that's what we're going to get to, and hopefully we get as much of it out so that citizens can get a good feel for how this thing has really developed and how far off course it is. You hit the nail on the head when you say that council is for the people.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's what it's for. What it does is a different thing, but I'm saying that it's supposed to be for the people.
Right.
And when people appear before council, council is supposed to consider what they say. Unless there's a ordinance or a law or a policy or procedure that's in place that says you can't, council should always rule for citizens because that's who elect them. They are these citizens' voice, and they're supposed to do what's in the best interest of the citizens. And in this case, you have to listen to the people that's most effective by the decision you're fixing to make. You can't say, well, we hear y'all, but this is what's best.
Yeah.
No, you don't do that. And like you said, when you start looking at how all of this happened and what it derived from, it was doomed from the beginning. Because if you go back to when the ordinance first appeared before council, it came to council as a proposed ordinance, and that proposed ordinance was requesting for rezoning of that particular site.
Mm-hmm.
The process that we have here in the city is, whenever you want to request for rezoning, the zoning department sent out letters. Those letters are sent to residents within 200 meters. Those residents that's opposed will state so in writing. Those who are may or may not. Well, the policy, not the policy, what's in the ordinance is if 20% of the residents in that area says no, then it takes a super majority of council to approve it. Now, you kind of wonder, well, if 20% or more says no, I mean, what's with the super majority? Why not just say majority? Well, when you take a look at this council, who has a history of certain council members just voting a certain way without consideration as opposed to the other, a supermajority breaks up that vote. It breaks up that vote. Now it states that we're not going to play politics with here because y'all must agree by a supermajority that this is right or wrong. So that is why you bring in the supermajority. It eliminates the 5-4-6-3 now. Okay? Council is going to have to sit down and hash through this and come to a consensus in order to have it passed or to disapprove it. So, keeping that in mind, this ordinance comes to council, and based on the letters that have been given and turned in to the city secretary that was certified by the city secretary, she in turn give these numbers back to zoning, and zoning determines the percentage of individuals living in that area. And they say, okay, there's only 18%, so council, you only need a majority vote. Or it was 20+% council. In order to pass this, you're going to need a supermajority. So that was determined. Those letters were calculated, certified, and given back in housing, then sent the resolution, the ordinance, and letting council know it's going to take a supermajority. Now that's that ordinance. That ordinance comes to your council, and it says, council, your actions require supermajority. Well, the people who were opposed of anybody trying to stop this development had already determined that we do not have supermajority to get this passed. And if you go back and review the video for the 25 June 2013 meeting of council, you will see that when that ordinance came before council, the city manager, immediately upon him stopping from reading the ordinance, when he's completed, the first thing when lights comes on and the mayor called on Councilman Albright, who at that time said, I move to table. And it was seconded by Councilman Lewis. However, Councilman Scott interrupted and said, my light is on and I would like to discuss it. Well, he was told the motion is on the floor to table it, and you don't discuss a motion to table. Well, that's true. That's true. But when you don't understand parliamentary procedures and you're trying to do what you want to do, sometimes it comes out in the wash. Well, the fact is, the motion was not to table. The main motion on the floor was the ordinance. Once the city manager finished reading the ordinance, that motion must have, it should have been a motion for the ordinance. Then it should have been a second, and then it should be a discussion on that motion. During the discussion, you can now have a subsidiary motion, which you talk to table. But to take the main motion and totally disregard it, that's where it went wrong. It went wrong then because that was not the procedures. That ordinance was a main motion, and in order to get that on the floor, it should have been a motion to accept it. It should have been a second, and once you got a motion to accept and a second, that is the main motion is now discussed. It's open for debate.
So were you suggesting that's a voluntary violation of
That's a violation because
Robert Rules of Order?
Parliamentary procedures. Parliamentary procedures, because
governmental procedure.
yes.
Law government procedure.
Well, when you have people who don't try to learn parliamentary procedures, believe that, well, we do what we want to do, you start getting people to not understand the correct way to take care of business.
Yes.
Do city business. Okay? You bring that ordinance is a item. In order to get this item on the floor, you have to have a motion. If you have a motion, in order for it to get on the floor, you have to have a second. If you have a second on a main motion, then a main motion is debatable or discussion. Subsidiary motions are done with after. But you have to do that before you can do it. But to take...
Because why table it when no one really knows what you're talking about?
There you go.
So you have to discuss it so that everybody understands.
Or
unless you already pre-planned it.
That
and now everybody who
evidently the way to get around this is let's table it. But what they fail to realize is you can't take any actions until you have the motion on the floor.
So in actuality, the motion wasn't even on the floor yet.
The motion have not been, no one moved to accept that motion for any type actions.
Yeah. So that's a total violation.
Right. I mean, it's simple procedures. It's, okay, this is the ordinance read, this item is read into the record.
But are you saying they just don't know the process and the procedures, or
it's two.
That are doing it,
no.
that are just taking it on themselves to do it, run it their own way?
It's two. One, they don't know the proper parliamentary procedures. One.
Well, isn't that what the attorney is there for? To make sure process and procedures are followed according to the law. Isn't that what the attorney's job is?
Well, you're absolutely right, but
the sergeant at arms or something.
No, your attorney normally supposed to keep them pretty straight with that. But sometimes if you look at the video, they turn the attorney around so many times, the attorney don't know which direction she's going. So, you know, it's pretty hard to keep up with where we at. But in this particular case, it's a simple case. It's one, an item has been read on the agenda. In order to bring it to the floor for any actions,
Yeah.
you have to first have a motion. So someone moved
Put it on the floor.
for the item. Then there's a second. Okay, now there's a motion and a second. All right,
Let's talk about it.
let's talk about it.
What's your problem, Councilman Scott?
You know, anyone.
Yeah.
It's pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean,
It could be
since-
debate.
Since he wanted to talk about
There
it,
you go.
he's the one that had his
There you
light
go.
on.
Now,
So he should have been recognized anyway.
Now, once all of the discussions, once everybody had an opportunity to discuss it, then a member may say, well, look, all this debate, why don't we, I move that we table it and have
A workshop.
workshop so we can further discuss it.
And not take up council business, move on to something else.
There you go. And then what you have is the proper procedures.
Yeah.
But now, everyone would have known what anybody had to say about that item.
Right.
You wouldn't have censored somebody
Right.
where you thought you were right, but it was a simple way of directly censoring it. So you see, it backfired, and because of that, that's where this whole thing started going right, where people fail to understand how we do things the right way.
Yeah.
And when you take a look at the part that where the attorney says, well, there's nothing written that says this is the last day we take letters. Well, you know, I find that pretty hard to understand an attorney saying a statement like that,
And I'll come up with that after.
for
all
the
that.
simple reason that if you have a procedure and the procedure says all letters are certified by your city secretary, at which time
It'll be changed.
a percentage is determined. Well, if the percentage was determined on the certified letters, then quite naturally it had to be an end to the letters.
Yeah. Especially at the time of council meeting.
Yeah. Well,
Does that mean
well, hold up now. Now you're jumping ahead of me because I'm finna get to that one. See, because the dog walking now. Okay, the dog walking.
The horse out the gate.
Yes, hey, it's on. You know, we in the clubhouse turn almost. But look here, look at this now. Once you got that, these letters, right? They bring it to council. They tell council, you need supermajority to act on this. Now, I don't care what action council takes. That item requires a supermajority to act on. Now, council elected to table it. Well, what council, once again, we talk about understanding parliamentary procedures. When you table an item, the item comes back in its same form. You can't change the form.
Yeah.
So if you table it with a supermajority requirement,
Comes back.
it comes back with a supermajority requirement. You can't bring it back and say, look here, we're gonna amend it. No, that wasn't what you tabled. Now, if you look at your agenda item for June the 25th, and you read that ordinance, you'll find out that there's an addition to the ordinance on the July 9th. When it came back, they added the school potential owner, school district owner, housing authority potential owner, and ag-tech potential development. All this was added. Well, guess what? Once again, if you table an item, it comes back as unfinished business in its same form. You can't change it. But it was so much going on to try to fix. It's like lying. You know the old saying, if you tell one lie, you gotta tell another lie to cover it up?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what's happening with this process. Once it starts going awry, they're using, or someone want to use this method to try to cover it, make it right, but in turn, you're only making it worse. So you go back now, you're getting the item back to you that's coming back, not in its original form, then the item is coming back with addition to it, and then you trying to change a requirement that's already been established. Now, this procedure that the city attorney said, well, we never had a date designated when the last day well, why haven't you said this in the past? This procedure that came before council has been routine for decades probably. Once housing determines a percentage and let council know, council acts on that with that instruction. So why is it changing for this one? Once again, we go back to individual trying to deny the citizens in that community the right to oppose something in their community when all of our procedures and policies support them doing it. They went out and got their 26% of letters. Well, guess what? The opposing side could have went and done the same thing. They chose not to. Now that they come out with 26%, you don't entertain the main motion, you table it. So nobody knows what's going on. All we know is that they table it to talk about it. Now, if you go back to see the purpose for tabling that ordinance was so that we could have further discussions and a workshop. Well, guess what? If you table an item for that purpose, then that's what you do. Well, they had the workshop and they had discussions. And during this workshop and discussion, never once did anybody bring up the fact that we could go get some more letters. They never mentioned it. They never mentioned, well, let's go back and get more letters. They had a workshop and discussion, like they said, pertaining to understanding zoning. Well, guess what? Then you come back with the meeting, and now all of a sudden you got letters. No. First of all, who said you could go and get letters? Second, why wasn't the opposing side afforded the opportunity to go and get letters? And if you were out there to find out how people really felt about this, why didn't you go and talk to the residents instead of go just to the people who said we're against it? So you see, all of this, we as citizens have to understand that when our elected officials start acting so reckless about citizens, then we are going to be faced with actions that you now see, legal actions being taken. And that is what the city attorney advised the council the day of the meeting.
She said at the time, City Attorney Val Tisno said the city had no process in place to establish a cutoff date for signatures for or against the proposed zoning orders. Without one, Tisno said council could decide to accept new signatures and stay within the law. Though she advised, don't do it. She said Tisno warned that at least 3 of the new signatures came with conditions such as age, residence requirements, none of which the city could regulate. Tisno said the Texas Municipal League had advised the city to stay with the original signatures since the conditional language could open the city up to future litigation.
Well, and the killing part about it is, it's written in the papers, but if you go to the website and you look at the video, if you look at that meeting where she gave council that advice, you'll find that this whole meeting is videoed before she gave that advice and immediately after she gave the advice.
Wait a minute, brother. You trying to say the tape was dubbed?
I'm telling you that you will see on that video, they will say, due to technical difficulties, this portion is being resumed in progress. Now, what that means simply is,
somebody doctored the tape.
No, they didn't.
It got to be, brother. Don't act like that.
No, that's not what it means. What it means is, we cut out that portion, and we're going to start it back when it starts back.
Okay.
All right, we all wind up today. Okay.
That's why they want new video equipment.
No comment.
They come up with that 3 weeks later.
You got shouts from the sideline.
Well, I tell you right though, I tell you this. I guess that point there brought a point up, but you know, those are type things that should not be tolerated by elected officials. So now, it's hard for me to believe that This tape is so beautiful, all the way up to where a city attorney tell you don't do something. I've been advised to tell you don't do it, and if you did it, it may lead you to litigation.
You may get a suit.
Right. And then, when I see the tape, I see the whole tape but that portion. So, you know, it's once again eliminating transparency. They don't want the citizens to see some of the
No,
things
brother,
that
there's
happen.
something wrong with the machine. The machine broke at that time.
That machine ain't broke
The
no
machine
more now.
broke. That's why Councilman Williamson requested for more equipment.
No, not Williamson, Thomas.
Thomas, or Kerry Thomas, Councilman Thomas was asking for more equipment.
No, see,
Yeah.
you see, look here. Why would we get better equipment when we got equipment right now that selectively eliminates? Okay? I mean, you
The
know,
tape run out, brother. The tape run out, and they had to reload the machine. That's all that happened.
but why then? Okay?
Well, I don't know. It's just a freak
Well,
accident.
well, as y'all can see this morning, Mr. Mosley really wants to push this issue. And look here, we having a ball in here today, and I'm sorry for that, but you know, I guess sometime I gotta have a little fun too.
I'm
And
just
today
saying,
is my
brother.
day to have fun. But I want everybody to really understand with all sincerity that there's a serious problem with the procedures and things happening with that. And it's mainly on the part of our elected officials with this case.
Well, it's
Now-
kind of like she said to me right quick. Kind of like Val said, we just got served this morning, and we're examining it.
Well,
That's the lawsuit.
well,
So that's exactly what she warned would happen.
no. Well, the thing is,
It's
that
happening.
my whole point is,
Right.
we could laugh and joke about it, but on a serious note, we have that attorney there to help us.
That's what I said earlier.
And when the attorney says, I've been advised, because I checked with other people, they say, don't
Don't do
do
it.
this. And if you do, you be opening yourself up for litigation. Then she said, if you decide to do that, as your attorney, I'm telling you, those three that got conditions,
Should not be
don't
used.
touch those.
Yeah.
Well, what she didn't understand that the council members who were pushing this understood, we need those three.
Yeah.
Because without those three, we
We
still
can't-
haven't gotten,
The supermajority.
that's right, we
can't
still
go-
got to deal with supermajority. So you have council members who fought. Now, if you want to know who, I advise citizens to take a look at that video. You will see three people. You will see Councilman Freeman, Councilman Williamson, and the mayor. They're the only three arguing the fact to accept this. They're the only three that being adamant, disregarding the city attorney's advice. And what's so surprising, I want all citizens to understand, if you look at other meetings, when the mayor wants
Something done.
her views pushed by the city attorney, she always states, well, Val, what's your opinion? Because whatever Val say, that's what we're going to do, because that's why you here. Well,
She didn't this time.
here we got the city attorney say, don't do it. You might be sued, and all of a sudden, you don't care what the city attorney said. So I have a problem with council members. I have a problem with all council members who will disregard the city attorney's advice when that little key word comes up that says possible litigation. What you telling me now as a council member, you could care less about this city being sued. You only want what you want. And that should not be taken lightly by citizens, because what you see now is exactly what was said. Now, I heard a comment when that decision was made, just in passing, someone made a comment, well, we ain't worried about them. Nobody over there can afford an attorney. Well, I guess what? Hey, Liv Ferry must have stopped by and dropped somebody's money, because guess what? They have an attorney. We have been sued with a temporary injunction. So basically, what people need to take from this you need to follow this.
Watch your representative.
You need to take a look at what's being done to those citizens, and you need to understand that the same way it's trying to be forced on them, it could be forced on you. It could be forced on you. It's not about what the council wants. It's what is best for our citizens. And in this particular project, I see some things that were very hard for me to accept. I saw citizens from housing projects get transportation, given a sandwich and chips and drinks, transportation to City Hall, and given a t-shirt when you get there. So I guess the only way you get the t-shirt, you have to be there.
Yeah.
And then go parade into council chambers and sit at the front row. And why were they there? Whoever told them whatever they told them to get them there was taking advantage and exploiting citizens. Why? Because what was being taken care of and discussed on council that day was rezoning. And rezoning has nothing to do with housing.
What did the t-shirt say? Tax credits.
And the t-shirt was dealing with tax credit. So, you know, here you got people that's being told they trying to stop us from having housing forever. That's not what the meeting was about. The meeting was about tax credit and rezoning. However, they gonna bring people. Now, who did they bring? They didn't bring senior citizens from throughout our city without housing. They brought in people who were not, but the majority was not senior citizens, and they already had housing. And so, you know, now you exploiting your citizens and you misinforming them to get them to go, and you're trying to put this back to the people. And what makes it so bad is, you know, you put them all in the audience, and then you start talking about housing. Then when they clap and cheer, you don't say anything, but the city attorney says she want to caution that they can't do that, and the mayor's response at that time was, well, she said y'all can't do it, but it's okay. You know, everything about this housing project and the procedures and things are gone. The citizens need to take a look at not what I'm saying, not what someone else is telling. You need to get the facts. Because if you find out the facts, you won't agree and you won't support this, and you won't support the method that our council is using, and you will not like the disrespect that they're having with those citizens around that Edison project. You know, this is about not forgetting who we represent and who we are the voice for. This is not about council members being influenced or trying to push a desire of a developer through council that embarks negatively on the citizens within that area. No. So this Edison project, the more you look into it and the more you start talking about it, you'll find out that the discrepancies are just unbelievable. Now, the housing itself, if you go back and check with the housing authority, they were supposed to hold a meeting and they were supposed to do certain things to meet the requirements in order to do that. Well, they just totally forgot about it. They didn't feel the need to hold a meeting. And whereas our zoning required that letters are sent out 200 feet from the area, their requirements require them to bring it a quarter of a mile from the proposed site. And it doesn't require us to send out letters, they must send out letters. They refuse to send out letters, they refuse to hold a meeting, they refuse to do what they're supposed to do. But guess what? After All of a sudden they say, oh yeah, we gotta hold a meeting. Oh, we gotta let people within quarter of a mile. So guess what? They conducted a meeting. Now, each person was allowed to speak for 2 minutes. Now, if you stutter, you can't say nothing but your name and address and your telephone number in 2 minutes. So, what kind of meeting where you allow citizens to talk that you're going to say 2 minutes? Why are we going to say 2 minutes? Because we know everybody showing up is against it. So, we don't want them to talk too long, so let's make it 2 minutes. Citizens, you know, this one show we had a little lively, I guess it was one of the lively shows, but I hope that you take to heart the things that we said that were what we mentioned, and I hope you call in next time, because this topic here is going to get interesting, and we're going to have to cover this one again, but next week we want to probably get some other folks in here and get people to talking about it so you can see how people feel about it. You know, I want you all to listen to people who live in that area, who have lived in that area for years and in some cases decades. So once again, as I always state, I don't want you to take what I say, but if you go and look, you will find out that there's information to support what I have told you, and that information is true. And you as citizens, it's time that we start looking at our elected officials, and we need to start differentiating between those who fail to realize why you're setting up there, and because you're setting up there doesn't give you the right to do things that are detrimental or has a negative impact on our communities. So we need to bring all these things to light. We need to have the citizens to get informed. And this is all our step toward making sure that people know what we have, what we're dealing with, what is being done, and how your representation is going. Because a lot of time, this information has not been getting to the voters. And because you have not had information on actions individuals do, you fail to follow or understand if they are really representing you or if they're representing themselves or someone other than a citizen. And that is one of the reasons you may not find some of the things that are being done to move our city forward. You know, maybe the things that are being done are moving individuals forward instead of our city. But in order for us to improve here in Port Arthur, we as citizens have got to get involved. We need to stop listening to what someone tells us, and we need to get up and just go do a little research and try to find out the facts. Get the facts together. A well-informed citizen is a citizen that will more than likely make the right decisions. And those decisions that we make are going to be decisions that we have to live with. And when I say live with us, when we talk about our state of our city, the conditions of our city, before you start talking about what someone did, ask yourself, did I do my part to ensure that the right person was there? Did I get involved enough? Once again, you listen to The Breeze, KSAP 96.9 on the FM. Here in the studio, we had David Jones, Flash, and we had Morning Star dropped in at the end, trying to keep a low profile, but he's seen back there in the corner. And Harold Doucet, until next week, it's your city, and you can do whatever you want. Do it till you're satisfied. I'm out.